What is up, guys? Welcome back to Chatter from the Cheap Seats, the podcast where we talk about sports, life, and everything in between. I am Jack. Sitting next to me is Sammy and Ori. We're going to have a banger of an episode today. Sammy, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. It's a nice long weekend for us. So we had school off Friday, and today is President's Day, so we get school off. That's been very nice. I've been able to get some stuff done, and just being able to chill for a little bit is very well appreciated. How about you, Ori? How are you doing?
Yeah, same here. I really enjoyed the time off from school. I did some bullpen throwing with Rapsodo. You guys know what that is, right?
Where did you find a Rapsodo?
Rapsodo, I have a person that I work with, and at their complex they have Rapsodo. So
yeah. Those things are
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now, when you guys have Mondays off because of like a long weekend or whatever, do you guys also get Wednesdays off or no?
No.
Yeah, we don't too.
Yeah.
And I've kind of grown to hate 4-day weekends or 3-day weekends because then it means we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday straight. And I kind of like the Wednesdays because you have a break, it splits up the school week. It's very nice. And I just find, I don't know, I'm kind of hate 3-day weekends now, which is kind of crazy. I never thought it would come to that point.
Yeah, you're right. I've never really thought of it like that. But yeah, I guess we do have to kind of sacrifice our Wednesday day off for Monday.
Although there's still no better feeling than when you don't realize that you have a 3-day weekend and you remember that you don't have school that Monday. That's the greatest feeling. That is the greatest feeling in the world. But Sammy, I mean, there's some big free agents that are coming up in football and some big moves that were made. The Houston Texans continue to be the most depressing organization in sports. They released J.J. Watt. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Where do you think are some potential landing spots for J.J. Watt? For me, I think the two big ones are the Steelers and the Bucs. I think the Steelers, obviously, both his brothers play for the Steelers. I think it makes sense for the Steelers from an organizational standpoint because they lost Bud Dupree. And I think that was kind of the downfall of the Steelers season. They start off with the 8 straight wins. Bud Dupree gets hurt. They have a couple more injuries on defense, and then everything just goes downhill from there. I think J.J. Watt could kind of replace him, and maybe that's the missing piece they need. I think the Bucs, I mean, their defense would be incredible. Levante David, Devin White, Shaq Barrett, JPP. Could you imagine if they added J.J. Watt, who is nowhere near the player he once was, but he's still an impact player. And then the other 3 spots that I think make sense are the Packers, the Ravens, and the Cowboys.
Well, yeah, Packers, unfortunately, our name, I'm kind of like, you could go to the Packers because I think they'd really love to have another edge rusher to kind of pair with Zadarius Smith. That would be really important for the Packers because obviously that offense has been overpowering and, the defense has been good, but to add a J.J. Watt caliber guy, that would really help to improve that front seven. Zadarius Smith and J.J. Watt would automatically make their pass rush, I think, top 10 in football, maybe even better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think J.J. Watt, whatever team he goes on, is going to have a pretty big impact because he's going to be extremely motivated. And I don't think he was too motivated on the Texans, which is it's not an easy thing to be motivated on a team that, wants to lose. And he's also a very vocal guy, big locker room guy. So I think he's going to be a great impact for whatever team he goes to. I'm hoping he doesn't go to the Steelers, but in my opinion, I think that's probably the most likely landing spot for him at this point.
I agree with that, but I think the narrative that, his brothers play for them makes sense for the J.J. Watt standpoint, but I think people don't realize, the Steelers have to want him too. So I think if the Steelers didn't want J.J. Watt, I think there would be no chance that he ends up there. However, I think there is, mutual interest on both sides, so it does make sense. Now, the wide receiver market is very interesting because there are some teams that have high draft picks that, I mean, this is a pretty good wide receiver draft. It's not like last year, but, you still got Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase. There's some teams that are going to draft a wide receiver and run with it. However, there are also some very high impact wide receiver free agents on the market. So let's just start off with Allen Robinson. Sammy, I know this one hits close to home for you. Where do you think are some potential landing spots for him?
I think number one obviously has to be the Chicago Bears. I think the Bears, a long-term deal might be tricky. I think Robinson has been kind of frustrated with the talks. He's made tweets talking about how he feels like the Bears should have gotten something done a long time ago. But I think the Bears really, really want and need him. I think Darnell Mooney is good, but he's not a number one wide receiver. If the Bears want to be competitive, they're going to have to keep him. I could possibly see a franchise tag. In terms of other teams, I know you got the Colts who are looking for maybe another wide receiver to pair with T.Y. Hilton. Or what other teams do you think Robinson? Because, there are a lot of wide receivers and a lot of teams that possibly need wide receivers. You also have the Dolphins, the Patriots. So where do you think Robinson's going to end up? I personally think Chicago's going to get him back, but maybe that's a little biased.
Yeah, as Jack was saying, this free agency wide receiver class is absolutely loaded. You have Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, so two top receivers as well as Chris Godwin. So, just very, very talented. It's going to be interesting to see where they go. Allen Robinson specifically, it's just going to be tough. I think whichever one of these big three receivers goes first, like if, let's say, Allen Robinson, signs very quickly with the Bears, then I think a bunch of teams are going to start scrambling for those other big receivers. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see who pulls the trigger first on these receivers and which team it will be. Right now, I think teams that really need a wide receiver, like it should be their top priority, is a team like the Patriots, who have a good defense. If they get those guys coming back who opted out last season, you get one or two receivers, maybe one in the draft, one in free agency. And I don't know what you would do with Cam Newton, but you need something on that offense. So I think the Patriots are going to be really looking for one of these receivers. But we'll see who pulls the trigger first and if it will be the Patriots.
I see where you're coming at from a Patriots standpoint. However, I think the thing that you have to remember with the Patriots is they don't have a quarterback. So until they address that, I don't think there's much that expectation-wise you can really set for them, because Cam Newton is horrendous. But I'm just going to talk about the wide receiver class from a general standpoint. So I'm not talking about specifically Allen Robinson or Kenny Golladay. I'm talking about the big three: Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay, and Chris Godwin as a whole here. Yeah. I think that, there are some obviously interchangeable landing spots for them. I think the Patriots make sense. I think the Jets also are in desperate need of a wide receiver, and they also have a ton of cap room. So I think no matter what, out of Kenny Golladay, Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, and who else am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting.
You also have,
big ones. I think the Jets end up with one of them. I think the Giants are another team that are going to be interested. I don't know if they end up signing any of them. But I think, and obviously you can't take out of the equation the teams that already have them. So you can't take out Allen Robinson back to the Bears. You can't take out Chris Godwin back to the Bucks. You obviously have to keep those in mind. But I think the Giants, I mentioned them earlier, they're a very interesting scenario because they have four big needs for the offseason: a wide receiver, re-signing Leonard Williams, re-signing Dalvin Tomlinson, and then also an edge rusher. And I think they can address, if they address three of them, it's a good offseason. I think, let's just start off with wide receiver. They could obviously have one fall to them in the draft. I think if they do draft a wide receiver, I think maybe Devontae Smith falls to them. I don't think that's very likely. I've seen that floating around in a couple places, but I don't think a wide receiver is going to fall to them in the draft. But you can't take it you can't say it's not a possibility. Yeah. So I think if they get, 3 out of the 4 needs addressed, whether it's through the draft or free agency, I think that's a good offseason for them.
Now, another landing spot for some of these wide receivers, I don't really think we've talked about too much. The Dolphins, I think, would be very interesting for any of these guys because obviously they had a very good surprise year. They barely missed the playoffs, unfortunately for Dolphins fans. And maybe the push that they need is to really kind of flesh out that offense is another wide receiver because Devontae Parker is, their number one guy. You love him. He's really making a case to be, a top 15 guy, maybe now, maybe in the future. But I think if they could add one of these guys who's a little bit more proven, that automatically makes that offense really, really explosive, because I think you already like what you're seeing a lot from Tua. I think you're going to see growth from Tua. Maybe you get Deshaun Watson, but I think people are kind of writing that off at this point. Matt Breida had a pretty good year when he wasn't hurt. So I like a lot of the things about this Miami offense, and I feel like adding a wide receiver out of this free agent class could really help boost them and maybe keep them competitive for next year.
I don't think it's fair to say that go ahead, Ori. I'll edit this out.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I'll just go. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Sammy. I think that the Dolphins are really going to go all in with Tua, give him, a good offensive line. I think they could really be in the looks for drafting one of the top tackles or guards in this draft. And then I think they're going to go out and grab a top receiver in this free agency class because they really want to surround Tua with the best pieces to make sure that he's the true guy. They're not going to be doing for his career. They want Tua to lead this team, and the way to see if he can do that is by surrounding him with talent, and I think they will do that this free agency.
Well, because then I agree with that, because then you're giving him no excuses. Now it's like, all right, your offense is good. You have no excuses. That defense has already been proven to be capable of being good. I'm sure they'll probably address that even more this offseason. They're trying to make sure that Tua has no excuses not to win. So they know, all right, if we're not winning, we got to address this. We got to fix the quarterback thing. Tua's not the answer. I think it's really kind of like a science experiment. They're trying to take out all other variables and be like, all right, Tua, are you the guy? And that's really where they are right now. I think it's interesting because if he is the guy, Dolphins could be a scary team. Don't think they're going to be able to take down the Bills for next year. I mean, anything could happen, but I think they'll be looking at a playoff spot for sure if things go to plan this offseason.
I agree with you. And I don't think it's fair to talk about, the NFL offseason without mentioning the quarterback market and the possibilities of trades. We mentioned earlier in a previous episode, Carson Wentz. I feel like the Carson Wentz to the Bears rumors have died down a little bit, but I think they can spark back up at any moment. So, Sammy, what are your thoughts just on the quarterback market as a whole? Because it is crazy.
Yeah, I think we could see a lot of guys being shipped around this offseason. And what I've kind of learned here these first few, 2 weeks or so, don't take anything until it's like set in stone, because it kind of seemed like Carson Wentz was surely going to the Bears. It was like maybe a week and a half ago or something. And reports were basically saying, all right, Carson Wentz is heading to Chicago, Nick Foles and Tariq Cohen are heading to Philadelphia. And I was kind of like, oh, God, it's happening. But here we are a week and a half later. Hasn't happened. Tariq Cohen later that day posted on his Twitter, I believe, that he wasn't getting traded. Like, he talked to the GM. Wasn't happening. So I think we have to be very cautious with what we believe, because a lot of stuff is going to come out. Some of it may not be true. Some of it may not be credible. And I feel like just don't overexcite yourself, because I got like kind of scared that night, because obviously I don't think anyone really wants Carson Wentz. So I was kind of like, oh man. And I was just going through my head, but so far nothing has happened yet. In terms of some other quarterbacks, I mentioned Nick Foles, who he got to start some games this year. It wasn't too great, with the exception of a game where he beat the Bucs, which was, still don't believe how that happened, but he could possibly get shipped with the Bears trying to invest money in maybe a free agent quarterback. I already talked about Carson Wentz. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, 49ers don't seem too thrilled about trading him. I think their price is very high. And Deshaun Watson, of course, I just kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo, the chances are not looking very likely, but if training camps come and Deshaun Watson doesn't show up, it might just be a situation where he doesn't really leave Houston much choice. So it's very interesting. A lot could happen. You also have Dak Prescott, who is a free agent. I believe that he's going to get franchise tagged. I think that's kind of the belief around the league right now. But, we have to just kind of let things play out because anything could happen. I think we just going to have to wait, let the offseason play out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So that is kind of the free agents part. We have some other trade candidates. Jack, did you want to highlight any of the ones that are kind of floating around right now?
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Gilmore is an option. I don't think Geno Atkins gets moved. He's on our list here. I think Evan Ingram, the only way Evan Ingram gets moved is if the Giants draft Kyle Pitts in the draft. We already touched up on the quarterback market. I think there are a lot of trade candidates that don't necessarily need to get moved. I think teams, if there's an opportunity that arises, they do trade them. I think if not, they just sit still. I think I'm not necessarily talking about the quarterback market. I think that's a whole different animal here. Yeah. But speaking of some moves that did happen, Sammy, let's move on to baseball because we did have some moves. Yadier Molina signs 1 year, $9 million back with the Cardinals. I mean, I think everyone knew he was going to re-sign with the Cardinals. Yeah. There's no way this was a legacy signing. I think the $9 million was sort of a payment for what he's done in the past a little bit. Jonathan VR to the Mets. And Sammy, I love this move. I think Jonathan VR is so underrated. He had a bad 2020, but you know my viewpoint on 2020. I throw it out the window whether you have a good 2020 or a bad 2020. But back in 2019, I mean, he had a 7.92 OPS with the Orioles, but he also can steal some bases. He stole 40 bases. So he's a guy where, if you haven't a 792 is a good OPS, but add that with 40 stolen bases, he's a dangerous player. He plays good defense. I think that's a great depth piece for the Mets.
I agree. It's because I think he's capable of starting on a lot of other teams. He's a great depth piece because he can play outfield. He plays middle infield. He's very fast. He led the league in stolen bases in 2016, which is, I didn't even really know that until I was looking on his Baseball Reference. So he's a very impressive player, a very impressive depth piece. And if I'm the Mets, it's a very exciting signing because he's also been a very steady offensive player through most of his career. So he's a very good depth piece, one of the more underrated depth pieces on the market. And the Mets got him for a pretty low price also, like only $3-something million. So I like it for the Mets. It's a very good move.
Yeah, I think that the Mets are building towards the future here. And
absolutely,
another team that's building to the future is the Marlins. I love what Derek Jeter is doing. They signed Adam Duvall, who he had an 833 OPS in 2020, which, like I said, I throw out the window. But, he's a power hitter. I think he's a veteran type guy because, the Marlins have a lot of young guys in that locker room. I think the Marlins pitching is ready to win now. Like, I believe that. I think Sixto Sanchez, Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah.
They have some legitimate pitching options. I think it's going to be tough in the NL East just because of how stacked that division is.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to compete this year, but I love what Derek Jeter is doing and building towards the future. Another team, Sammy, that's building towards the future is the Kansas City Royals. And, I'm just pouring on the love today, but I love what they did. They got Andrew Benintendi in a 3-team deal. So the Royals receive Andrew Benintendi and cash considerations. The Mets receive Khalil Lee. And the Red Sox receive Frankie Cordero and 3 players to be named later, plus Josh Winowski, who they recently acquired from Toronto in the Mets trade. However, Frankie Cordero is kind of the big centerpiece in this deal, and he's a guy where, he's got everybody raves about his potential. His exit velocity is off the charts, but he hasn't been able to put it together yet. Just on the Royals standpoint of the deal, I like how they're a team that might not compete this year necessarily, but they're not just going flat out rebuild. They're trying to stay competitive.
Yeah, I think the Royals, they're a team that could kind of surprise some people. The pitching is not good. Not going to sugarcoat that. They don't have a rotation really. They don't have a good bullpen, but offensively, they could very well be a top 10 team in baseball when you think they have Soler, who's going to be bringing power. Last full season he led the league in home runs. Benintendi, who has a ton of upside, and he hasn't quite shown that power yet in the big leagues, but he's gotten on base, he's hit for average, and I think the power could come for Benintendi. You also have Whit Merrifield. You have a lot of guys who I really like. Santana, who they brought in earlier this offseason. The Royals could surprise a lot of people. I think they're surprisingly deep offensively. I think they have a lot of star power. I don't think they're in a position to win now because of the pitching, but this Benintendi move is a nice one. It's good for Kansas City. For Boston, I kind of don't really understand the move. Benintendi was he's really their most highly touted prospect for the past few years. Like I said, the power wasn't really there, and he hasn't quite worked out as they maybe thought he would, but he was still a pretty good hitter, and I just don't understand why they would trade him away this early in his career. I like Frankie Cordero. I think he also has a lot of upside, but Benintendi, I think, has been more steady. And, for the Red Sox, a team, I think, still trying to compete, I'd rather have the guy who's been more steady with a little less upside who still has a lot of upside than Frankie Cordero, who, yes, could turn out to be incredible, but also has really struggled at the major league level so far.
Yeah, I think this deal is really interesting because you don't see this too often, a team that isn't really going to compete right away, like the Kansas City Royals, but they're still going out there and they're still acquiring pieces that are going to help them win now and win in the future. So in that aspect, I really do like it. I agree with you, Sam. I really don't understand this from the Red Sox perspective. I thought, Benintendi was kind of a cornerstone of that team and a future of that team. He plays in electric left field when he had that diving catch in the playoffs. He's electric watching him play, and I thought he would be a piece for the Red Sox for many years to come, but that's not the case. It's going to be interesting to see what those three players are that aren't named yet, and maybe we could see a big prospect. I don't know if we will,
I doubt it. Usually not.
Yeah. They would have been named. And just to play devil's advocate for a minute here, for the Red Sox point of view, I think that, Andrew Benintendi is a guy, he had a bad second half of 2019, and he had a bad 2020. And in reality, he was hurt, so it was only 50 games or so. But I think they're a team where they're not trying to compete. They're in rebuild mode. I think Heinblum has made that abundantly clear, and I think that they're trying to shed as much salary as possible because that's the new age of baseball. But I love this move for the Royals. Yeah. And, same, your Cubs. Jake Marisnick, 1 year, $1.5 million. It's a bit of a flyer move, but he was tremendous in 2020.
He was very good in 2020, and he is a great defensive center fielder, and that's really why the Cubs are getting him. We lost Albert Almora, who was kind of our guy that we go to. Didn't work out offensively, despite being a first-round draft pick, but he always had that solid glove. He was great in the outfield. Marisnick is kind of replacing that, and funnily enough, Almora is going to the Mets, Marisnick's going to the Cubs, so kind of a swap-a-roo there. But, I like the deal. It just kind of adds defensive depth for the Cubs, and the Cubs were the best defensive team in baseball last year, so they're looking to stay at that level. With Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo, who's one of the best defensive first basemen in the game. You have Ian Happ, who's improving, and Marisnick, a good depth piece. I like it. And the Cubs also made another move. Makes me very happy as a Cubs fan. Jake Arrieta is back in Cubby Blue. He is returning to the Cubs on a 1 year, $6 million deal. And I'll be honest, I think out of all of the free agents that were out on the market, I think the Cubs wanted Arrieta the most, and they got him. I think he's a guy who's obviously struggled since he's been in Philadelphia, besides really that first year. But I think that is a few things. I think, one, it's injuries. He's obviously been very injury prone, which is an issue in itself, but it's kind of an excuse. I say you can't look at those numbers too closely because he's been very hurt. And I was listening to Cubs podcast, and they were kind of talking about how there were adjustments that he wanted to make, one of which being he wanted to throw his sinker low, despite the league is kind of going in the opposite direction. You don't see too many guys doing that anymore. And the Philadelphia pitching coaches let him do that. And that's where he got burned a lot of the time. So with these Cubs pitching coaches, what the guys in this podcast were saying is that they can make that adjustment. And Arrieta, he's had success in Chicago. He'll probably trust those guys more, maybe stop throwing that sinker low and stuff like that. I think the Cubs have, with Tommy Hotovy, much better pitching coaches than Philadelphia. And if he can avoid injuries, stay healthy, he's not going to get back to his 2015, 2014 form, but he could be a solid 4 or 5 starter, and that's what they want, not to mention the nostalgia effects. I love seeing the beard back in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that move by any means. I think baseball, you've seen a lot of pitchers go for, throwing the fastball up in the zone, throwing their breaking balls low in the zone, get that high spin rate up, big deal in baseball nowadays. Oh, yeah. So I think if the Cubs analytic system or analytic front office, if the Cubs analytical team can help Jake Arrieta get back to that point where he's throwing that fastball up in the zone, even though it is a sinker, I think there's some upside there. I really do. Now, Jay Bruce to the Yankees is another move that, it was a minor league deal. It's not a huge deal. If he's bad, they cut him. It's not a big deal. If he's good, I think the best possible scenario is that he replaces Mike Ford as sort of their backup first baseman, can play some outfield. He's got power. But, yeah, so I think that's kind of the upside for him.
Yeah, and then another big move, probably the biggest move of this – or no, there are 2 big moves that we have yet to talk about. First of all, James Paxton, New York Yankee, but he's heading back to where he started. He's heading back to Seattle, 1 year, $8.5 million. And I think Paxton – I doubt Seattle was his first choice. I bet he would have loved to go back to New York. Obviously, I'm sure he'd rather compete than – be on the Mariners, but I think the good news for him is that he'll probably be towards the front of that rotation. He'll get a lot of innings if he can stay healthy, and it's a chance for him to maybe show that he's worth even more money. So, it's only a 1-year deal. Once he reaches free agency again next year, maybe he'll be earning more money. Maybe he'll want a long-term deal. So this is really Paxton saying, all right, here's a chance. I'm going to try and prove myself here. The Mariners aren't a good team. I'm just going to go out here, compete, and show these contenders that I'm worth a long-term deal. And I don't know if he'll earn it. Paxton, I think the Cubs were looking at him as well in terms of starting pitchers. So he's a fun guy, and I like the deal. I think he's definitely looking to earn more money, though, once his contract is up. Last but not least, definitely not least, though, Justin Turner back to the Los Angeles Dodgers. 2 years, $34 million deal. What do you guys think of this? I think I've been saying this all offseason. I don't think there was anywhere else that Justin Turner was really going to go. I think he wanted to be back in Los Angeles. I think the Dodgers and, of course, the fans wanted him back, and they got him back. And that was, I think, besides maybe getting Bauer, one of their huge priorities this offseason, and they got it done. They checked it off the list.
Yeah, I mean, they really just said, we don't care about the luxury tax. They were totally okay with, absolutely blowing through it. But I like the move because, they want to stay relevant. They want to keep winning. They just won a World Series after having a few heartbreaking losses in the playoffs, and they want to go back. They want to keep winning. And I think it's really cool to see this team staying relevant, staying at the top of the league, no matter the cost, really.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think, it's a great move. I love how he broke it himself on Twitter. I thought that was cool. Okay. I don't like the baseball reporters. The only baseball reporter I like is Jake Storiale. Putting that out there now, talking to
you gotta love Rosenthal.
I don't. I just don't like any. I really think that it's such a petty game. Like, oh, I was first. I don't like it. But Sammy, it is time for Jack's dumb Twitter take. Okay.
Is it? All right.
It is. And this time, it's not a dumb Twitter take. It's an insightful Twitter take. So it is time for Jack's insightful Twitter take of the day. So I saw this on Talkin' Yanks. Now, Aroldis Chapman does not have the best history in the postseason. He has blown, the Mike Brasso homer was a huge deal. The Altuve homer was a huge deal. And then also in the Cubs 2016,
Who was that? God. I'm literally blanking.
Jose Ramirez, right?
No, it was
why am I blanking on it?
But it wasn't Coco Crisp.
No, it was
I'm literally blanking.
It's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, so
maybe I'll
Aroldis Chapman has been dynamite in the postseason. If you just take a step back and look at the games that he's pitched 17 playoff games for the Yankees, right? Now, in that time, he has allowed a run in 3 of these postseason outings. Obviously, 2 of them have been huge, but in 3 of these postseason outings, Chapman has a 1.71 ERA with 30 strikeouts in 21 innings with 6 saves and 0 blown saves.
Yeah, well, I mean that's great and all, but like when you're giving up home runs in the biggest moments in like Game 5 last year, and then
I agree with that. I think that the narrative that he's a bad postseason pitcher is overblown. Now, speaking of the Yankees, let's get to the AL East predictions and previews. It is that time of the year. Everyone, give it a clap it up.
All right, yes.
I am hyped for this. We are ready, Sammy. Why don't you start us off?
I do, and it's weird. I feel like we literally just did this for 2020. Time flies, but here we are doing our second annual regular season predictions for MLB.
Second annual regular season preview and predictions.
Yes, and we're doing record predictions. Finally, our first 162 game season we'll be covering on Chatter from the Cheap Seats. Very exciting. But in 5th place, sorry to do it to you, Ori. But I got the Orioles again, and I think they did show at the beginning of last year a lot of promise. I think the offense looked really good. I like Santander. And the fact that they were doing it all without Trey Mancini was very encouraging. I think the offense is going to be middle of the road or better. The pitching staff is why this team is just not ready to be successful. And I think in the future, they got some good guys in the farm system that they can develop. But as of now, they got Jorge Lopez, who I like. John Means is a guy who had an all-star year in 2019, I think. So I like John Means, but they don't really have like an ace guy. I guess Means is kind of that guy right now.
What do you have their record at?
I have the Orioles with 68 wins, 68 and 94.
Oh, that's kind of hilarious.
Do you have the same?
Me and Sammy are always
no
twins.
Way.
We're always twinsies.
Wait, do we have the same exact record?
Exactly same record.
That's
we did not correspond this before. Like exact same. I have it in my notes. 68.
Wow. In a 60 game season, that's a little easier to do. But in 162 games,
I mean, what are you
crazy?
Odds? I mean, come on.
Yeah, Jack, what are your thoughts on the Orioles? 5th place.
Yeah. So I have them in 5th place also. I have them 68 and 94. I think their lineup has a lot of potential. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, you love Trey Mancini. I think Anthony Santander is a huge piece. Mountcastle and DJ Stewart are all nice pieces. They're young. They have a lot of talent in that farm system.
Pedro Severino, I like.
Yeah. I mean, he's not that.
I mean, I think he has some upside.
Yeah, I agree. But they're pitching. I mean, when your best starter is John Means, who, you will say that, oh, he had an all-star year in 2019. He had a 3.6 ERA in 2019. And the only reason he was an all-star is because you have to have an all-star from every team, and he was the best player on the Orioles. So
I feel like me.
A 3.6 ERA is not awful, but I mean, when you're talking about your best pitcher,
right?
That's and in 2020. Now I know that I don't like bringing up 2020 stats, but he did have a 5.6 FIP and a 4.5 ERA, so he got lucky with a 4.5 ERA. Yeah. But I mean, their starting pitching is atrocious, and their bullpen is even worse than their starting pitching. Their bullpen, they do not have they had Michael Givens, who they traded away, and now, I mean, they have, what's his name? Dylan Tate, I guess, is their only reliever that I can really see having a good year. Everyone else is just awful. I mean, their pitching is atrocious.
Yeah, I mean, Orioles, I think they're definitely heading in the right direction. I like what's going on, but they're just not ready yet to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
All right. So, I also have the Orioles here in 5th place. I have them with 71 wins.
All right. Fair. That's fair.
And I think it's because you guys are missing some stuff here. There's going to be young studs.
It's a 3-game difference.
I mean, what are we really missing?
Yeah, but you guys are bashing this bullpen, which I don't think is going to be as bad as you say. Tanner Scott is on the come up. Dylan Tate is on the come up. These are all guys that are going to ball out this season. I feel it. And then you have a bunch of young studs. As you said, we have Chance Sisco, who's a big catching prospect, and then obviously Pedro Severino, who had a really good 2020.
Yeah.
Freddie Galvis, we signed. Rio Ruiz, who, again, is on the come up. Anthony Santander, Austin Hayes. We have a lot of young power on this offense. So I think the offense is going to carry this team.
The 71.
But the pitching is not going to be as bad as I think you guys are saying, although it's not going to be enough to be over 500 with only 71 wins.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think the future is definitely bright for the O's.
Sammy, I have some good news for you. Not Sammy, Ori, I have some good news for you.
All right.
I have I'm kind of a good luck charm for prospects. If I'm at a prospect's major league debut, he's going to have a fantastic career. Okay. All right. I was at Lucas Giolito's debut, and I was at Trey Turner's debut, and I was also at Aaron Judge's debut.
When Aaron Judge
went back to back. So, I have a great track record of being at amazing baseball players' debuts. Now, I was at Austin Hayes' debut in 2017. So, I mean, you got to factor that in. That you got to put in the Jack effect there.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important.
That's a very valid point.
Okay. Very valid point. Ori, do you want to give your 4th place team now?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so I have the Red Sox here. I don't think it's too surprising. They made a few moves that I thought was good. They're staying relevant. Eduardo Rodriguez is coming back. They have a pretty good. I mean, not a really good bullpen, but I mean, you have guys like Adam Ottavino. But the real power on this team is through the offense with guys like Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts. But I don't think it's going to be enough to kind of carry this team. So I have them winning 76 games here, going 76 and 86, slightly above the O's.
All right, Jack?
Yeah, so, I kind of agree with Ori. I have them going 78 and 84 as my 4th place team, the Red Sox. I think their lineup is still very good. Their left side of the infield, I will take with about any left side of the infield in the major leagues, with Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts, who I think Xander Bogaerts is one of the best shortstops in baseball. I think he's highly underrated. But, I mean, they signed Kiki Hernandez. Alex Verdugo, is going to be great. However, their pitching is bad. But there is a world where, Sales coming off the Tommy John, he comes back nicely. Erod and Evaldi have good years. So I think they're going to be better than people expect. But I don't think they're going to be great. I think their bullpen, Adam Ottavino is a guy where I can see him getting flipped to a competitive team at the deadline. So I don't know how competitive they're going to be, but I think they're going to be better than people think.
All right, boys. Hot take. Y'all ready? And Jack, you were kind of talking about it. I have the Rays in 4th place, and I have the Red Sox in 3rd place. Whoa. So yeah, I think I got some evidence here, and it could turn out completely different. I think the Rays could easily win 95 games. I think I'm putting them closer to their floor. I think the Red Sox, I'm putting them closer to their ceiling. I don't think with their pitching limitations, guys coming off injuries, I don't think the ceiling is too high. But I think their ceiling is at 86 wins, which is where I have them. And I have the Rays at 84 wins. Rays lost some huge, huge pieces. Blake Snell, who was their ace. Now, I mean, I guess Glasnow was kind of their ace. I think there's a lot of guys I don't really trust yet in that starting rotation. Charlie Morton, you lost, who's one of your more consistent arms. Jose Alvarado, you send to Philadelphia. And, they're losing a lot of pieces. They got Rich Hill. They got Chris Archer. But those are not guys that are going to replace the guys that they lost. And, yes, I think their bullpen is still good. But your pitching is now going to be middle of the road. Your starting pitching. Your bullpen, definitely above average. And I think your offense is middle of the road, if even. So I don't really trust the Rays to be that great this year. With the Red Sox, I think they made a lot of sleepy moves. I think they made a lot of moves that people are sleeping on. Kike Hernandez, probably, in my opinion, the best depth piece available this offseason. He can play basically anywhere. He's a good hitter. He fields very well wherever you put him. I like that. Hunter Renfroe, a lot of upside, high-power guy. He could easily go for 30 home runs with enough at-bats. Marwin Gonzalez, a nice depth piece, some very nice moves. And, I haven't even mentioned the fact that Chris Sale, former Cy Young guy, I believe, is coming back off of injury. I don't know if he's going to be as good, but he's still going to be an ace guy. I was looking through his baseball reference. He's absolutely insane. And I think he can get right back to maybe having a 3-something ERA, which is what you want from your ace. Eduardo Rodriguez coming off of the injury as well. And then you got Evaldi. I mean, the Red Sox front three isn't that bad. Their pitching is middle of the road, and their offense is ridiculous. Xander Bogaerts, possibly the best shortstop in baseball. I think that there's an argument to be made for that. Devers could be an MVP guy if things really turn out well for him. I think they're a good team. I think re-signing Jackie Bradley is not out of the question. He's still a free agent.
Sammy,
do that.
Sammy, they gave away Jackie Bradley's number.
Maybe they won't.
To somebody else. Okay, and if you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, Chatter from the Cheap Seats, YouTube, subscribe. You can see that I turned my back on Sammy when he was talking about that, and I like to call this the radio caller effect. Okay, I have coined this phrase. Whenever somebody says something so astronomically stupid, and I love you, Sammy, I'm not calling you stupid, I'm calling your take stupid. Okay, whenever somebody says something as astronomically stupid as what my friend here, Sammy, just said, I'm going to call it there's no, my mind is so blown. There is no, right reaction to it. So I'm going to call this the radio caller effect. When somebody says something, I think we should put, I think we should put Brett Gardner. I think Brett Gardner should play third base, Why don't they move Bryce Harper behind the plate? He was a catcher in the minors. Okay.
I don't see what's so ridiculous about it. The Red Sox aren't that bad of a team.
Okay, I'm going off. Sammy, how many wins do you have the Red Sox at?
With 86 wins.
86 wins. You have the Red Sox with 86 wins. How do you have the Red Sox with 86 wins? They have no pitching. Chris Sale is coming off of Tommy John. Even if he's good, he's going to be on an innings limit. Erod, he had myocardosis last year. Nathan Eovaldi is the most injury-prone pitcher in baseball history. Their bullpen sucks. They have two good relievers. Adam Ottavino is probably going to get flipped. Kike Hernandez, who was a depth piece on the Dodgers, I know he will start on most teams. He's going to start for them. The Red Sox are in full rebuild mode. How can you say that they're going to win 86 games? That is so far out of the question. When you said a hot take, I was expecting you to say the Rays were going to lose by 2 games and the Red Sox were going to have 80 wins at the most. There is no way that this Red Sox team wins 80 games. I am going to lay it all out on the table. Sammy, if the Red Sox win over 80 games, so 81 or more, 80 is a push, 79 or less. If the Red Sox win 81 or more games, I will wear a Red Sox hat for every single day, every single episode that we do from the time that the 2021 season is over to the time that the 2022 season starts. I will be rocking a Red Sox cap.
Bet. Look, I don't think this is that ridiculous of a take. 86 wins is, I'm not exactly sure, but it's right around where they were in 2019. And when you look at them, they're not that different of a team. In fact, they may be an improved team. The only thing I will say, the Benintendi trade, which we already talked about, confuses me a bit. But Frankie Cordero, like I said, a ton of upside. I think if things go well for Boston, I think if they could avoid injuries, which isn't I think if Cordero works out, fine, maybe not a superstar, you're still a good team. The Red Sox, I see no reason why they can't win 86. I totally agree that, their floor is probably somewhere around, 72 games. They could easily finish in last place in this division if, injuries hit them and all of that. But I think there's no reason that this Boston Red Sox team can't win 86 games. You're saying they're rebuilding, and I kind of maybe, but I don't really see it. With all these signings they made, nice depth pieces that could be starters like Kike and Hunter Renfroe, I think they're a team that can still sneakily maybe even compete in the AL East. Not really compete, but win more than half their games. And that's where I am. I think it's completely possible for them.
Let's towel off here. Let's everybody take a deep breath, okay? Let's not get crazy here. So, where were we? So I think we've all talked about our fourth place teams. Have you?
I talked about my third.
Yeah, and Sammy, just to go back to your take real quick, why do you have the Rays slipping so much?
I think, Blake Snell was a huge, huge part of that team's success. And we have to remember that if the Yankees weren't so injured last year, the Rays would not have won as many games. They would have not won that division. I think their record is a little bit inflated from last year because of that. And, they were like a second-place team in 2019, a very good second-place team, but I don't think 84 wins is out of the question for them when they're losing some of their best pitchers in Snell and Morton. Their offense, they didn't really make any moves to bolster the offense. They lost a few pieces, actually. And I don't really see a lot of the guys having huge years. I don't think Lau's going to be the same. I think G-Man Choi is going to be fine. That's kind of my reasoning with the Rays. Once again, I think the Rays are a team that they can make the playoffs again. I don't think they're going to win this division by any means, but they could win 90, 92 games. But I think they're definitely regressing, and it's not really their fault. They always have these money issues. They can't really keep guys that are good, and then they have to pay, like Blake Snell.
Yeah, okay, I respect that. So now we'll go. I guess Sammy already told us his third place team, but Jack, tell me yours.
Yeah, so I have the Blue Jays as my third place team. I think I have them at 85 and 77. They're a young, up-and-coming team. I think their lineup is legit. Obviously Vladdy, Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette. They have some legitimate hitters. Oh, yeah. However, I think they're really young, and I don't know how they're going to fare in an 162-game season because we've never really seen them do it in an 162-game season. I think pitching is a huge issue. I think they don't really have – Hyun Ryu is a good ace, but he's old. He's up there. He's pretty injury prone. He could get hurt. I think, their pitching is not up to standards. Their bullpen is getting better. I think Kirby Yates was a good signing. Dolis is a good move. Romano is a good piece. I think they're a good up and coming team. And I think maybe they have they arrive a year early type of thing. However, I'm not really nervous as a Yankee fan of them yet. I think they're still kind of little brother at this point, and I still think that they're not quite there yet.
Yeah. So let's see. Did you do your third place team?
No, I'll do it now. I agree with Jack. Blue Jays made a few nice moves on offense. Obviously they had the big signing of George Springer. They also acquired Marcus Semien, and then you have these young guys who are just going to keep being better. And so I think they're on the come up, unlike the Rays who are going down, but I still don't think they're going to surpass the Rays this season, but probably next year. Again, I just think the pitching is what does them in, and they'll have next year and this year to kind of find their way when it comes to the pitching. But their offense is going to be legit. It's going to be on fire. I have them winning 83 games, going just a little bit over 500.
Yeah, so I'll move on. I have the Toronto Blue Jays in second place, and I think they're a team that's, I think they're not going to be at their full potential, but I think they're getting there. I think they're a team that can absolutely compete by signing Semien and Springer, really fleshing out that offense. That tells you all you need to know. They want to compete this year 100%, and they absolutely can. They have a lot of up-and-coming stars, like you guys already talked about, with Vladdy, who I think without maybe focusing as much on playing third base, because he'll be at first, or maybe even DHing some of the time, I think he's going to be able to hit a lot better. I think his ceiling is incredibly high. Guys like Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, I think it's going to be a very exciting team without a doubt. In the pitching, I think the bullpen, AJ Cole, I like where he could be going. Kirby Yates, good signing, despite a bad 2020. He was one of the best relievers in baseball in 2019. I think the Blue Jays, think that he can get back to that level. And Hyunjoo Ryu, I love him. He's, been one of the more consistent arms past 2-3 years. So, yeah, I really like what the Blue Jays did this offseason. I have them with 92 wins, 92 and 70. I think they're easily good enough to be in second place in this division. You guys, I guess, have the Rays in second place.
Yeah. So I'll start off here. I have the Rays in second place. I have them going 88 and 74. I think that losing Snell and Morton is huge. I think that's a ginormous deal. I think that's going to hurt a lot. I think Alvarado in the bullpen hurts also. Absolutely. But I think the Flyers on, Michael Wacha, Rich Hill, on Chris Archer, I think the Rays are going to raise. And one out of those three guys is going to have a resurgence and a huge year. I do believe that. I think the Rays develop starting pitching, and the Rays find starting pitching better than any team in the MLB.
Yeah.
So I think that their rotation is still going to be good, and their bullpen is still going to be one of the best in baseball. I mean, their bullpen is insane. So I have the Rays going 88 and 74. How about you, Ori?
Yeah, so I have the Rays going 85 and 77. I agree with you, Jack. I think even though they lose Blake Snell, they took a few flyers, and one of them has to hit. I mean, that's just the Rays' way. That's how they've been doing it. That's how they found their success. So I think that's going to be more of the same. And because now we know all of our teams up until number one, I think we all have the Yankees here. So I guess I'll start it off here on what I think about the Yankees. First of all, I have them going 94 and 66. They're going to have a much improved, maybe not a much improved team, but hopefully because they won't face as many injuries, it'll be better for them this season. I don't know. I just am not completely in love with this starting pitching. And they do have a tough, and this AL East is very tough. So, playing all those inner division games is going to be difficult for them, but I still have them winning 94 games and winning the division.
Yeah, I'll go next with the Yankees. I have them with actually 10 more wins than you have them with. I have the Yankees winning 104 games, and I think they are way above everyone else in this division. I don't think it's even close. I think they're going to kind of beat up on these teams. I think what's going to happen is second, third, and fourth, are going to beat up on each other, Rays, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. And then the Yankees are going to be way above everyone else because they are. If they can stay healthy, I think they had a lot of great moves to bolster the rotation. You lose Tanaka, which hurts from a baseball and a personal level. But Tyone, Jack's very sad about Tanaka. But Tyone, I think, has a lot of upside if he can stay healthy. Kluber, if he can stay healthy, should be a nice guy to be able to throw in there. And, Garrett Cole obviously has been top 3 pitcher in baseball probably. So I think the Yankees are a great team. And then this offense is just absolutely ridiculous. And if you can get a full year of Judge and a full year of one of the other stars, the Yankees will be absolutely set to win 100+ games. But you got to make sure these guys are healthy. That's been a huge issue. I mean, that's a huge factor. If the Yankees can stay healthy, they're the second best team in baseball, I think, almost without a doubt. So it's unfortunate, though, because they haven't been able to stay healthy.
Yeah.
If they do, 104 wins is what they're going to get, in my book. Jack,
I had the Yankees at 95 wins. I had the Yankees at 95 and 67. Now, that may also seem low, but it is not because I don't think they're the second best team in baseball. I do think they're the second best team in baseball, but I think at this point, you have to factor injuries in. I think it's been 2 years of nonstop, almost unbelievable injuries, almost not normal. It is not normal the amount of injuries this team gets. Now, I think that there were going to be injuries last year. Eric Cressey, the Yankees training guy who best in the business they hired last year, said that there were going to be injuries because it is his first year implementing his plan. So I wouldn't be shocked if there weren't as many injuries this year just because, this is his second year as the Yankees training staff guy. I think he's going to make a big difference. But I think the reason I have 2 main factors for the reason why I have their win total so low. I think one is, like I just said, the injuries. And I think the other is the Yankees will be winning by such a high margin. They'll be up by 6-7 games going into the last couple of weeks of the season. That I think they're going to kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit and sort of prepare for the playoffs, especially with the amount of injury-prone guys that they have on their team. Maybe they rest guys a little bit more. than they normally do. I think that if this team wins 100+ games, I would not be surprised whatsoever.
I think they can stay healthy.
I don't think you would be surprised either, Ori, if they stayed healthy and won 100+ games.
No, if they stayed healthy,
yeah, they're still talent-wise the second best team in baseball, in my opinion, better than the Padres. Now I also think that they took a couple of coin flips. I think if one out of two of Tyone and Kluber hit, if one of them hits their full potential, I think they have a top 5 rotation in baseball.
Yeah, well, I think one of them has their full potential. I mean, their full potential is crazy.
With obviously Garrett Cole, the second best pitcher in baseball, Corey Kluber, Tyone, Davey, and Monty, especially with the depth of Clark Schmidt and Domingo Germán. And when Sevy comes back, I think that they might start him out of the bullpen at first to build him back up. But I think that he will be the number 2 pitcher come playoff time. So
What is Sevy's schedule as of now for coming back?
I think they said like late summer, but I think that's
encouraging as well.
Ultra conservative, just because with all the backlash that the Yankees have gotten with giving the timelines and not hitting, I think that's ultra conservative. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in July, like early mid-July. I wouldn't be shocked. I think a realistic time frame is early mid-July for him. I think, and when you think of this team in the playoffs, if you have Cole, Sevy, and then flip a coin, whoever's healthier or better between Tyone and Kluber as your playoff rotation, that's a damn good rotation.
Oh, yeah.
Davey, Monty, Germán to the pen, and I think all three of those guys' stuff, especially Davey and Domingo's, I think their stuff translates really well to the pen, and I think that's a dangerous rotation in bullpen come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge factor too. I mean, if you can get Sevy back, and which it seems like you will, and if he is good, that's huge. I mean, because his upside or his potential is ridiculous if he can stay healthy. That would be huge, especially come playoff time. If you could have all of those guys healthy and you hit on either Kluber or Tyone, the Yankees are definitely one of the best teams in baseball, and I think they'll probably end up. I mean, and for me, if they can stay healthy, they'll probably be the most winning team in baseball, because when you think about it, the Padres and the Dodgers are just going to beat up on each other a lot. So I don't think they might not even pass the 100-game mark. If the Yankees can stay healthy, though, I think they're enough above these other teams in the AL East to surpass 100 wins. But that does wrap it up for our AL East preview. We will be back next week for the NL East, so stay tuned for the NL East if you're a Nationals fan, because a lot of people listening probably are Nationals
fans. That NL East is going to be a doozy.
That is going to be I think you could probably put almost any of the teams. I mean, Marlins and Phillies maybe not, but maybe. You could probably put any of the teams.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Let's move on now to some more somber news in basketball. Anthony Davis, he re-injured his Achilles, and this is worst case scenario for the Lakers. The regular season doesn't matter. They're going to make the playoffs, probably going to be the 1 seed, going to make a deep playoff run and be there in the NBA Finals again. But, this is scary, because if he's not able to go come playoff time, and I don't know if it's that serious, I don't know the severity of it. I know he was getting an MRI today, but if he's not available to be 100%, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, Anthony Davis is obviously LeBron's most important guy in the Lakers, especially how he's been playing as of late. But Anthony Davis is so important to this team. Just the dynamic he brings, because when you have him and LeBron on the floor at the same time, they're the best team in the NBA, without a doubt. It's so hard to stop. The Bulls have played the Lakers twice. I've watched it. I've watched us get dominated by those two guys. So it's really hard to stop. Him being hurt is a pretty big blow, and you say they're going to be the 1 seed, but I don't know. We're going to talk about this also in just a few minutes, but the Jazz are looking like they're going to be the 1 seed, and we're still early in the year, but they are looking very, very good right now. They have won their last 7 games, and they're coming off another win streak of maybe 8 or 9, so they're the hottest team in the league, and they're looking like they're for real. And I'll ask you guys, do you guys think the Utah Jazz are for real? Because they're obviously a very well-built team. They're obviously very hot, but do you think they can sustain some level of this? Maybe top 4 seed or maybe even 1 seed? Or do you think they'll fall off at some point later in the year?
I mean, you said it, Sammy. They're built very, very well.
Yeah.
And the Jazz have just been playing extremely good basketball. There's no doubt about it. They've been playing incredibly well, and I think that, if they keep this level of play, they are legit. There's no doubt about it in my eyes. Whether they can sustain it for a full season, whether they can sustain it through the playoffs, those are things I don't know. And those are things that only time will tell. But I feel like they're built well enough. They have the talent. They have the coaching. I mean, they can do it. I think they are legit. I definitely think they are legit.
I think they can definitely be a 3-4 seed in the Western Conference. I don't know if they can compete for a championship just because I think the Eastern Conference is stacked with the 76ers, the Nets, and the Bucks. I think the Lakers.
The bottom of the Eastern Conference is scary.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's really true.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many good teams. I don't know if they're going to be able to compete. And the Suns, I mean, they built it right. They're starting to turn the ship and get out of the rebuild period in Phoenix. I mean, 6 straight wins.
They are out of the rebuild period in Phoenix, without a doubt, because you have a lot of guys playing good basketball and a lot of guys. The Suns, I think, are a team that kind of tanked. And, DeAndre Ayton, there was the number 1 overall draft pick, and he's playing probably the best basketball he's played in his career. The scoring, maybe not what you want, but 12.4 rebounds per game, absolutely ridiculous. Chris Paul has been good, 8.2 assists per game. Booker's being the leading scorer that he's supposed to be, averaging almost 25. And you have guys off the bench that are really producing. Miles Bridges, he's a starter, but you got Jay Crowder, who is an addition this offseason. I like that a lot. And then you got Cameron Johnson, a draft pick recently. He's been playing great. So the Suns, kind of like the Jazz, are a team that's done the rebuild correctly, and it's really starting to come to fruition. I think they can, I definitely had them making the playoffs this year. I think I maybe even underrated them a little bit. I had them at like the 7 seed, I think. I think they could maybe even win home court advantage for the first round with a seed 1 through 4. So Suns are an exciting team. Jazz are an exciting team. But with that, we are, unfortunately, we're done for the day.
Unfortunately is correct.
Yeah, it was a fun episode. Lots of stuff going on, and we can't wait. We're kind of, football ended. Baseball's about to start. Basketball's going on. So it's, I'm very excited for baseball season. And, of course, the NFL offseason. Lots of different things to watch, and unexpected stuff is definitely going to happen. J.J. Watt already happened. That was unexpected. So lots of fun stuff coming up. Ori, any last words here today?
No, just want to say thank you guys for listening and interacting with us. It's really been a pleasure to do this podcast with you, Jack, and Sammy. So, yeah, it's been a fun one, and hopefully we can get more of these MLB predictions, and maybe Sammy's crazy takes will be right or wrong. Who knows?
Hey, I think the Red Sox are pretty bad.
Oh, they will be wrong. But, when is it never a fun episode with us three? We're a bundle of joy. We always are, always will be, always have been. That is not the correct order of that saying. However, we always have a great time. Check out our other episodes. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Chatter from the Cheap Seats on Instagram, easy. Chatter_Cheap Seats pod on TikTok. And we'll be back. We'll be back every Monday night. Maybe we'll push it twice a week once summer starts. But, we haven't had those discussions yet. But what a fantastic episode. We're going to have a fantastic episode next week and the week after. So make sure you keep tuning in. And Ori, take us out.
Bye.